passed away and she died in giving birth to him. So he was handed down to one of the other wives of Al-Imam Al-Hussein alayhi salam. And this woman, she holds a very special value to the Imam himself and to Imam Al-Hussein alayhi salam. Because even she narrates, it's been documented through her, she said that before the Muslims invaded Persia, she had a dream where she saw the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Imam al-Hussein with him. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he asked her hand in marriage for his grandson Imam al-Hussein. So she said she saw that in a dream. And she said, I woke up and I did not make sense of it because I had no idea who these people are, but it felt very real to me because no one has dared to come and ask for my hand, me being the princess of the king of Persia. She says, the second night, I had a dream that Fatima al-Zahra salamullah alayhi came to me. And she said, well, I also want you to marry my son, Hussein alayhi salam, but in order to do that, I want you to become a Muslim. And shortly after, the Muslims will come and will take you captive, and I guarantee you that no harm will come to you. And days went by, and then she was taken captive with the rest, and she was brought to Medina. When she entered the mosque, and it was narrated in Bihar al-Anwar, he said when she came to the mosque, he said the mosque lit up. It's like even people, like they were amazed to her, how chaste she was and how her beauty was. And when she entered, she spoke in Persian, in Farsi, what we call today. The king of the time, which was Umar ibn al-Khattab, he thought she cursed him. So his initial response, as Arabs do most of the time, he wanted to hit her. He wanted to hit a woman in the mosque of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Amir al-Mu'mineen salamullah alayhi intervened. He said, you would not dare touch her. She did not curse you, she said something else. Then the Imam alayhi salam, he spoke to her, he said to her, amongst the people that you see in the mosque, who would you choose to be your husband? And among the crowd, Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam was sitting there. And she came and she put her hand on Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, and she chose him to be her husband, as she has already seen him in her dream, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam has already asked for her hand. So this is when it comes to his mother. Sadly, like I said, he did not get the chance to see his mother. So in the year 38 Hijri, the Imam salamullah alayhi was born. By the time he managed to live about 2 years with Amir al-Mu'mineen salamullah alayhi, and he lived the rest with Al-Hassan alayhi salam. And by the age of 33, he witnessed the calamities of Karbala. At that time, he was sick and frail, so he could not participate in the battle himself. And after Karbala, things went, the other way around. So the Imam salamullah alayhi, he lived 57 years, 34 of which he was an Imam. So this is just in a brief. Imam salamullah alayhi, he was titled as Abu Muhammad because his son is Muhammad al-Baqir alayhi salam, also an Imam. The Imam has two distinctive nicknames that we always refer to him by, As-Sajjad and Zayn al-Abidin. And these two nicknames, they have a story behind it. Zayn al-Abidin, why do we call him Zayn al-Abidin? Imam al-Sadiq narrates a narration. He says, on the day of judgment, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gathers every human being that walked the face of earth, billions, zillions, I don't know. And he says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make calls. He says, where are the sabirin? Where are the patients? A group of people will get up. Where are, for example, al-qanitin? A group of people will get up. Where are those? Where are those? And, a group of people will get up. And then one call comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He says, Ayna Zaynul Abidin? Where is the best of the worshippers? And the Imam says, I can see the word of the Imam. Only one person gets up and walks towards the gates of heaven. And that is Al-Imam As-Sajjad salamullah alayhi. For Allah called him Zayn al-Abidin in the day of judgment. Therefore we call him Zayn al-Abidin in here. Why? Because when it came to his worship, he preceded every one of his time. Even the Imam Salamullah alayhim, they said, well, when it comes to him, everything stops. This is when it comes to Zayn al-Abidin. As for Sajjad, his son, Imam al-Baqir Salamullah alayhi, he says, why do people refer to him as As-Sajjad? He said, because every time he would remember a blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he would go into sujood. He would prostrate to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So for example, if he remembers that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he gave him another day. He wakes up in the morning and he realizes that Allah gave him another day. The first thing he would do, he would go into sujood. He realizes that he's healthy, he goes into sujood. His family is around him, he goes into sujood. So every time he remembers a ni'mah, a blessing of Allah, he would go into sujood. And then the Imam Salamullah says, every time he goes through a hardship as well, he would also go into sujood to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Every time he reads the Quran and he goes through a verse where there's a sujood, either wajib or either recommended or compulsory, said he would go into sujood. And constantly the Imam, throughout his life or throughout his day, when he feels that he needs to show his servitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he would bow and he would go into prostration for Allah. And because there is a constant action of the Imam throughout the day, he got the nickname As-Sajjad. Because As-Sajjad is an exaggeration form of sujood. Is the one who does too much sujood, we call him Sajjad. So these two nicknames, they always have a reason, like I mentioned, when it comes to the Imam Salamullahi alayhi. Now, Imam Zayn al-Abidin Salamullahi alayhi, he lived in a time in Medina. It was pretty much very close and similar to our current time. And what the Imam Salamullah alayhi had to go through and had to endure, it wasn't very easy. Because now the Imam Salamullah alayhi, he came to a society not only that just finished murdering his father and his household, but the society itself was corrupted. And the society itself was corrupted from different aspects. It was corrupted socially. It was corrupted politically. It was corrupted economically. It was corrupted morally. And it was corrupted religiously. Now, all those forms of corruption were happening in Medina. And the Imam's role, alayhi salam, is to come and rectify and fix these mistakes. And all this, it needs to be done while there's an oppressive regime, an oppressive government that rules everything. So this is pretty much our time now, where we have pretty much the same corruptions, and we have Big Brother who's in control of everything else, which no one could go against, right? So it's similar. So the Imam Salamullah alayhi, when it came to him trying to rectify that mistake and fix it, he had to go and endure a lot. So for example, when it came to the moral aspect, to the social arena, it came to a stage because you have the king. If the king is corrupted, then obviously those who are under him, under his authority, will be corrupted too. So, look at the picture here. The one that was in power was Yazid la'natullahi alayhi. Now, he was in power. Yazid used to drink alcohol publicly. He used to fornicate publicly. He used to commit incest publicly. He used to play with monkeys and animals and cheetahs publicly. So when this image of a leader that leads a nation, that gives himself the title of Amir al-Mu'mineen, the commander of the faithful, this is his actions. What do we expect the people to do? They will obviously do the same thing as their leader. If the leader allows it, then obviously it will become the norm. And that's why you see that fasad and corruption at the time of Yazid was unprecedented. To the extent the historians, whether it's al-Mas'udi or Tabari or others, or even Raghib al-Isfahani in his book Al-Aghani, he says, Medina, the city of the Prophet ﷺ, at the time of Yazid, was turned to a musical learning school, where if someone needs to learn music and singing, they would go to Medina. This holy city turned into what we call today a nightclub. That's what he did to it. And even according to the historians, they said in every alley, in every house, you would hear music and singing. Because he wanted to take and deprive people of their moral values and replace it with something else. So now you have a city that is completely corrupted from a moral state, where they're drinking. Even in Mecca, they started having what? Having their own bars by the outskirts of the Kaaba itself. And look at our time now. Isn't this exactly what's happening? What's happening to Medina now? Right now, in 2020, what has the family of Saudi, the Saudi family, what have they done? They've done the exact same thing that Yazid did over 1,000 years ago. Now, where Muhammad ibn Salman, MBS as they call him, he started nightclubs and music concerts right next to the Haram itself in Mecca and Medina. And no one seems to say a thing about it, and no one seems to be complaining about it. So when he opened a halal bar in Medina, no one said anything. When he opened a nightclub right next to the Haram, no one complained. And this is happening, and it's getting worse and worse. And no one seems to talk and say anything. So when I say the time of Imam Sajjad is very similar to our time from that aspect. The same things were happening back then are happening now. So this one comes to the social and the moral aspect of things. When it came to the political sense, where Yazid placed himself to be the king of people in a stage where he thinks that he is a human and everyone else is subclass of a human beings, which are much lower than him. And he took bay'ah, he took allegiance from people twice, that they have to submit that they are servants of him, not even normal, let's say, just normal people or as citizens. No, he did not accept the concept of citizens. He says, you need to submit to me as a slave. And the historians state that he used to bring a stamp, and he used to stamp their feet and their foreheads and their necks that says, this is a servant of Yazid. And we live in this miserable condition where people are being labeled now. The same thing, nothing has changed. Labels might be fancier, but the same thing. We're still living in the same time of Yazid as well. So you have this, and when it comes to the politics of it, this is what you have. You have a person who's in charge who looks at everyone else as servants. When you look at, for example, racial division that they did, he applied the Machiavelli notion of divide and conquer, or Julius Caesar, depends who said it first. So he divided people into subclasses. Those who are the Umayyad dynasty are higher, and those who are Arabs are higher, and everyone else is below them. Everyone else is a servant to those subclasses. And those subclasses, he gave them the wealth, and he gave them everything they need to seek and to make corruption on the land of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they created havoc on the Muslim nation. So this is when it comes to politics. When it comes to the economy side of things, the same thing. Where he deprived the Muslims of their rights, where he used to take tax of them, and nothing was given back to them. So all the treasury of the Muslims used to go to him, and he used to spend it on his own pleasures and desires and on his own people. So the Muslims were living a stage of poverty. When you look at the religious aspects of the time of Imam Sajjad salamullah alayh, people, after the death of Imam al-Hussein salamullah alayh, the Muslims themselves in general as an ummah, they lost hope. They said, well, if the Imam, if the grandson of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam gets killed, what is there left? What is there left of religion? Nothing is left. So people at that time, their moral state and their religious state, it came to the lowest point where most of them, they said, you know what, heck with Islam, let's just do whatever we want to do. That's one. And the Shi'a themselves, when it comes to the Shi'a, when they saw that Imam Salamullah alayhi, Imam Hussein was martyred and killed in Karbala, they themselves, they also lost hope. That's why Imam al-Baqir Salamullah alayhi, Imam Sadiq, Imam Zayn al-Abidin Salamullah alayhi, they made the statement, they said at the time of Imam al-Sajjad, the entire city of Medina did not even have 20 followers of the Ahl Bayt in it. So a city of thousands, there's not even 20 followers of the Ahl Bayt. So you could see how things went downhill at the time of Imam As-Sajjad Salamullahi alayhi. This is when it comes to them. And then, because the Muslims back then, they were too busy going around and moving towards India and China, trying to open land and conquer lands, and towards Africa and towards Europe. That movement that they increased the geographical space of the Muslim world, what it did in return, it opened a multi-faith, multicultural dimension into the Muslim world. Where if you look at Europe, for example, or Africa, they had their own customs, they had their own cultures, and they had their own value codes. And most of these were corruptive. They were very bad moral codes. Now, when the borders were open between them and the Muslim world, all these cultures invaded the Muslims' countries. And whatever they used to do in the West, the Muslims started to applying, which is exactly what we're doing today. We open the gates to the Western world through our media and through the mainstream media, and now we're adopting their methods. We're adopting their beliefs. We're adopting their values. We have neglected the Islamic values, and we've taken the Western values. So, okay, and now I want to be free, therefore hijab has to go out of the way. For the sake of freedom, why should I wear a hijab? Why should I pray? Why should I do this? Why should I do that? Why should I get married when I can have a girlfriend, for example? Why should I do this when I can do that, for example? So we see that we're adopting all these values from the West, and in return we're giving up what? Our Islamic values. Now imagine all this, and then comes Imam As-Sajjad Salamullahi alayhi, and he wants to correct and rectify the situation. So you could see how difficult it was for the Imam Salamullahi alayhi. Where other Imams, when they came, when it was the time of Imamah, most things were stable to a certain extent. But Imam As-Sajjad's time, it wasn't very stable. So Imam As-Sajjad Salamullahi alayhi, the first thing he did in order to rectify and fix this mistake, he actually done it in a very smart, wise way. So the first thing he did, he kept himself away from the masses and away from the city itself. So he spent few years outside Mecca, where he used to have a land, a farm that he used to have outside the city of Medina, and he kept himself away. By doing so, the government that was the ruling government, the ruling party, when they saw that the Imam is not with the masses, he's not preaching, he's not saying anything, they took that as a point of comfort. They said, well, no harm could come from him, so it's okay. So he's not harming us. Once the Imam Salamullah alayhi managed to get them, or be at least in their good side, the Imam Salamullah alayhi slowly started working on creating what we call role models or leaders in society, because such a job cannot be done by one person. So the Imam Salamullah alayhi used his time to create role models and to create leaders. So he spent his time teaching and preaching to those that he can rely on. Now this is something that we need to work on as well. When we live in a very corruptive society, a very corruptive system, we need to create leaders as well. We need to bring those who are ready. We need to teach them, educate them, so they can take control. Because this is not a one-man's job. This is not a job for the speaker or preacher or the sheikh or the sayyid to come give a lecture and then you don't see him until the next martyrdom. No. We need to work as a community to create leaders so they could take their role within their community. So this is what the Imam Salamullah alayhi did to fix and rectify. So first, he took the time. 2, he created the leaders. And 3, the Imam Salamullah alayhi, he managed to pass his message to the masses through different ways. One, through supplication, through dua. And as you can see that we have a Sahifa as-Sajjadiyya. And this amazing book was written by the Imam Salamullah alayhi. If you read it, supplication to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But to those who have intellect, those who are smart, they could read between the lines and they can see what the Imam Salamullah alayhi is wanting, what wants from them and what their commands is. So he used to communicate with his followers through supplications, where a normal person would assume is just a normal dua. So this is one of the methods of the Imam Salamullah alayhi. The Imam Salamullah alayhi established Risalat al-Huquq, treaties of human rights. 50 rights that every human being needs to abide by in order for him to be a human. The Imam established that. 3, the Imam Salamullah alayhi, through the ma'atim and the majalis of Imam al-Hussein that he used to hold, he used to spread his words and his teaching to the masses. So he used the minbar of Imam al-Hussein Salamullah alayhi as a way and as a method to communicate with the masses. And this is exactly what we're doing today. We're using the same minbar, the same pulpit that the Imam used to have to preach to people. We're doing the same thing. So we need to use these majalis for our benefit at our best. We need to really give them their status, because now we're having this, I don't know what's happening to people these days, where they're looking at the minbar as an old style, old-fashioned. I need something more intellectual. I need something with more information. That's not going to get you anywhere. You can go to Google and you can get as much information as you want, see if that gets you anywhere. The value of a person is not how much information he has. The value of a person is how spiritual he is to ascend to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not about you having formulas in your head and you knowing a lot of garbage. No. It's how close are you to Allah. And when the Imam says, Al-Hussein Safinatun Najat, he is a ship and the ark of salvation, means you cannot reach Allah until you come to Hussein alayhi salam. And you come to Hussein through his minbar. So that's something we should not forget, something we should not neglect. So the Imam Salamullah alayhi used to do that when it came to using these majalis, using these ma'atim, and he used them to spread his message. The Imam Salamullah alayhi, nevertheless, because due to the fact that he witnessed the calamities of Karbala, and he saw what happened to his father, Imam Hussein alayhi salam, and to his brothers, and to his uncles, and everyone, and his companions, that left a very sad mark and a painful mark on the heart of the Imam alayhi salam. The Imam Salamullah alayhi lived 40 years after Karbala. And these 40 years, according to the narratives, he used to spend the day fasting and the night in worship. And the narrator says every time would they bring him his iftar to break his fast, the Imam would look at the water and he would remember his father Imam Hussein, and he would cry and cry and cry. And he kept doing that for 40 years until he was called one of the 5th Bakka'in, those who cried throughout the course of the human history. He was one of the 5th because he cried for Imam Hussein Salamullah alayhi. And he used to, every time he see people about to slaughter a sheep, he would run to them and he says, "Did you crunch that sheep's thirst before you slaughtered it?" They said, "Yes." He said, "My father, he was martyred and they did not quench his thirst." So he had to witness all this, and he had to live with it. And he had to witness to see his aunt Zainab alayhi salam to go through all this humiliation, being chained, being whipped, and being dragged from one city to another in front of people, to be mocked by them. And this is very hard to take for a normal person, yet alone an Imam. So the Salamullah alayhi, not only he had to endure so much hardship and pain when it came to the people that he lived with and to the state of chaos that he was in, but on a personal level, he alayhi salam has suffered the most. And if we want to look at the life of Imam Salamullah alayhi, we will need months and months. I haven't even began to look at one single thing of the Imam. I'm just looking at the crust from the outside. So the Imam Salamullah alayhi lived a very fruitful life, that he managed to change the system, he managed to change the environment that he lived in by adopting certain things. And us, when we look at the life of the Imam Salamullah alayhi, it's not a matter of a lesson in history or a lesson in biography, rather is a lesson that we can derive lessons from, that we can apply in our life and apply in our day-to-day life. That's what we need to do from the life of Imam al-Sajjad Salamullahi alayhi. One thing we end with, that Imam Sajjad Salamullahi alayhi, he emphasized greatly on the fact that we need to keep a link between us and Imam al-Hussein Salamullahi alayhi. He used to say, do ziyarah to Imam al-Hussein, go visit him, visit. And you can see that Imam insisted so much on people, on his followers, to do ziyarah to Imam al-Hussein Salamullahi alayhi. And now, when we talk about ziyarah, it doesn't have to be physical. You wouldn't have to, if you can take a ticket and go, that's good. But if you can't, doesn't mean say, well, I don't. No, the Imam Salamullah alayhi, Imam Sadiq says, the least she could do is face towards Karbala and say, Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. That's it. As simple as that. You drink water, you say, Alhamdulillah, Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. Saying Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah, be sure that every time you say it, the Imam replies to you. Because Raddus Salam, to reply Assalam, is wajib, compulsory. So the Imam Salamullah alayhi would always reply the Salam. Except in the ziyarah says, Hajabtahum anna, that we cannot hear them due to our sins. But the Imam nevertheless replies our Salam. So let us keep this, let's take this teaching of the Imam Salamullah alayhi, and let us always remember Imam al-Hussein Salamullah alayhi in the same way, in the same manner that Imam Ali ibn Hussein as-Sajjad Zain al-Abidin used to remember his father at every single moment, and especially every time he sees water. Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah, sallallahu alayka ya Aba Abdullah, rahimakallah ya Aba Abdullah, la'anallahu man qatalak, ولعن الله من شرك في دمك ولعن الله من بلغه ذلك فرضي به أنا إلى الله من ذلك بريء وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على محمد وآل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين.